Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, faithful friends who are glorified by Allah. In a small town in China, there lived a husband and wife named Zhang and Lime, both of whom were known as devout Christians. Zhang was a small businessman who worked hard to support his family, while Lime was an elementary school teacher who loved his students very much. Students, they both attend local church services and are active in various church activities every week. They always take time to pray and attend services with other congregations. They have been married for several years, but have not yet been blessed with children. They always pray and hope to God that one day later, they were given a child as the most precious gift in their lives. This desire became even stronger, especially when they saw their church friends who already had children. After years of waiting for their prayers to finally be answered, Lim was declared pregnant, and the news was welcomed with great joy by the couple. They could not hide their gratitude to God and immediately shared the good news with the congregation in the church. The birth of this child was felt as a miracle and a very great gift. When the day of the child's birth was near Zhangwei and Li began to prepare everything, they began to think of a beautiful name for the baby, and most importantly, they planned a baptism event in the church after the baby was born. They really wanted their child to be baptized in the church so that they would receive blessings and protection from God from childhood, as they believed in Christian teachings. They talked to the church priest, and everything was prepared properly. Carefully, family and close friends were invited to attend the christening, which would be held soon after their baby was born, to Zhangwei and Lime. This was a very important moment, a first step in raising their child with strong Christian values, but they never expected that the event that awaits on the day of baptism will change their entire lives dramatically and shock everyone. One morning in June 1988, a baby boy was born who became the greatest gift in their lives. The baby's first cry became the most beautiful music. The first time they heard the baby looked healthy and strong with a shining face, Li was very grateful for all the time. And when he held their child for the first time, tears of joy rolled down his cheeks. They named their child based on the tradition of the Zhang family, which believes in the importance of giving a name that contains hope and strength. The name they chose was Zhangming, which means bright light, as a symbol that this child will bring light and blessings to their family after Zhang's birth. The moment they were eagerly awaiting was the beginning of a spiritual journey for the child, but behind that happiness, none of them realized that this day would bring more than just an ordinary baptism service, but an extraordinary event that would change their lives equally for the baptism. They chose a sunny day on the weekend so that more family and friends could attend. Li, who was full of attention to every detail, began preparing for the event. The entire congregation to prepare for this baptism together, they ensured that all the preparations in the church were complete. Holy water, candles, and the place for the baptism procession had been prepared. The long-awaited day has finally arrived. That morning, Zhang Wei and Li Mei woke up earlier than usual. They felt a mixture of happiness and emotion because the big day for their child had arrived. Lime carefully marked Zhangming in a clean and beautiful white baptism. Pak, a symbol of purity and a new beginning in faith. Zhang never stopped smiling while holding his child, who looked so peaceful. The big family started. Since morning, Zhangming's grandparents, uncle, aunt, and his cousins came bringing gifts and prayers to give their blessing to the little baby. They all wore their best clothes, a sign that this event was something very important for them. There was B's anger and high hopes. As the service begins with God's blessings on the child who will be baptized, the head of the church community is filled with hope and serenity, witnessing God's grace for the baby who will be baptized. The church congregation, consisting of family, friends, and the faithful congregation, bow their heads following the prayer. With full sincerity, their eyes closed, their hearts focused on the sacred moment that would soon occur after the prayer was finished. The pastor invited Zhang to bring Zhang closer to the altar, who will soon receive holy water, which is a symbol of the beginning of his spiritual journey in the Christian. Pastor Li then took the holy water, which had been prepared in a small silver bowl. He raised it as high as he could and offered it to God before bowing again to continue the procession. The pastor's soft voice broke the silence, but when the pastor brought the bowl closer to Zhangming's forehead, suddenly something unexpected happened. Zhang Ming, who had been very calm from the start, suddenly cried loudly as if he was refusing the baptismal water that was about to touch his forehead. The story shocked everyone present. The church atmosphere was originally peaceful. Pastor Lei was stunned for a moment, not expecting the baby to react like that. The congregation started whispering to each other, surprised at what was happening, but the baby's crying didn't stop there. A few moments later, amidst the strong screams, another sound was heard, which was much more surprising. Zhang Ming, the baby, who was only a few months old, suddenly stopped crying, and in a clear voice he said, "Allah Muhammad." Suddenly the whole church fell silent. The eyes of all the congregation widened. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. The voice was so clear that it came out of the mouth of a baby who shouldn't have been able to speak Zhangwei. And Limi froze in place speechless, while Pastor Le stood still with the bowl of holy water still in his hand. No one knew what to do next. The event felt so absurd it was as if the world inside the church had changed in an instant. The congregation present began to feel that something extraordinary was happening, something they never imagined would happen on this day of baptism. The reactions of the church congregation varied. Some of them whispered to each other, trying to understand this extraordinary event. Some began to feel that this was a sign from God, while others felt afraid and confused and didn't know how to respond. Some of the congregation began to feel that this event was a sign from God, although they couldn't fully understand what it meant. Some people even thought that Bei Zhang might be the incarnation of Jesus, considering in their teachings, Jesus was a child who was born in a miracle. But the words of Allah and Muhammad caused great confusion among them. There were also those who felt anxious and uneasy. They began to doubt whether what they witnessed was something good or a warning of something greater. The pastor tried to calm the congregation by waving his hands, asking them to remain calm, but even he himself felt elements of what to say. But in the midst of the congregation present that day, there was a Muslim man named Abdul who was present because he was invited by a Christian friend who wanted to introduce him to the church community. Abdul was a devout Muslim, but he was known as someone who was open and tolerant of religious differences. Abdul slowly got up from his seat and walked forward towards the altar. His steps were calm and he felt every surprised gaze from the church congregation, which was now focused on him. When he reached the front, he stopped for a moment, observing the atmosphere around him. The faces looked bing, and some of them even started to feel afraid. Abdul knew that he had to speak because of what happened, a sign from Allah with Danut Abdul Qatir's brother. What just happened was not a coincidence, but a sign from Allah. The baby who spoke earlier said the names of Allah and Muhammad, and this is not something we can just ignore, because in Islam, Allah is the Almighty God, and Muhammad is his messenger. I am sure that this incident is guidance from Allah, that Islam is the true religion. This is a call for all of us to reflect on our beliefs and search for the true truth. Some of the congregation began to shake their heads, while others fell silent in shock when they seemed silent and had not yet given a response to Abdul's statement. Abdul knew that this message was difficult for most of those present to accept, but he felt that he had carried out his obligation to convey the truth that he believed in. After Abdul finished speaking, the atmosphere in the church became increasingly tense. The church congregation seemed to exchange glances with confusion, clearly visible on their faces. They didn't know what to believe. To whom? Is it to Pastor Lei, who they have always considered as a spiritual leader, or to Abdul, who has given a logical and strong explanation of the events they have just witnessed? Pastor Lei is silent in front of the altar. His face shows mixed feelings as a devout church leader had prepared themselves to continue the baptism procession. On the other hand, many congregants were starting to doubt their beliefs. This incident felt very real and could not be ignored. Zhang Wei and Li were also in deep confusion throughout their lives. They had dedicated themselves to Christian teachings, but what they witnessed with their own eyes made them start to question their beliefs. Li cried, what should I do?" Sarah Zhang stared blankly at their baby, who was now sleeping soundly, hugging her as if nothing had happened. After hours of confusion, discussions between the church congregation began to overwhelm the members. The congregation split into small groups, sharing views and feelings about the event. Sarah, the others pondered Abdul's statement and tried to understand the meaning behind it. The atmosphere was full of tension and hope. Zhang Wei and Lim, still silent, began to feel a wave of feelings. They realized that today was not just about the baptism, their child, but also about a deeper journey of faith. Lim held her husband's hand tightly as if asking for strength to move in this uncertain direction. Zhang looked at their baby, who was now fast asleep. Abdul, who was still in front, saw the tension on the faces of the congregation. Right to convey the message of the brothers and sisters, Allah wants us to stand together and find out the truth. This is the thing that will destroy the Yal. Abdul's words convey the sincerity of Abdul's invitation, and there is a feeling that maybe this is a call from God. The balance between fear and hope became even more real after a long debate, and the church congregation began to feel a strong call to change. There was a deep curiosity, and many of them felt that they could not ignore what they had just witnessed. Slowly, the decision to convert to Islam began to form in their hearts at that moment. Arrived with a firm voice, Zhang Wei stood up and said, "If this is a sign from Allah, then we must follow it." Lim and I wanted to say the Shahada and convert to Islam. Applause and cheers were heard among the congregation, and many began to feel compelled to do the same. Abdul immediately responded, directing them lined up one by one. People began to approach the altar, lined up with confidence and courage. With beating hearts, all the congregation present began to recite the creed simultaneously. Their voices echoed in the church when the creed was said. The moment felt sacred and full of meaning. The previous baby Zhang Ming being rejected for baptism has now become a new symbol of the nascent faith within these people. The atmosphere of the church is filled with a strong spiritual aura, uniting all those present in the same belief. The story ends with the entire congregation, who were once Christians, have now become Muslims. Feel as if they have found the truth they have been looking for after going through various miraculous events that they never expected.